For the Wall Street Exclusive, I'm Joe Springer. Welcome back. So we want to take a look at Alan's portfolio. If you've watched my other segments, I said look at the Vanguard Mid-Cap ETF Fund, the VO. Very low expensive. It's all America. It's just a really good fund in my opinion. And Alan emailed and said, you know what? I've got some of that in my portfolio. And what do you think about the rest of my portfolio here? And so he's got 40% mid-cap VO, 20% SPY. He's got 5 Vanguard funds. We love Vanguard, good for you. So he says, I've got 40% Vanguard VO, the mid-cap fund I recommended. He's got 20% the SPY S&P 500, doesn't bother me at all. He's also got 20% in growth Vanguard VUG. He's got 10% in the total stock market Vanguard VTI. He's got 10% in the Vanguard High Dividend Yield, and that is VYM. What I want to show Alan is that you really have basically with the growth and the income and even the total stock market, what you really have is another S&P 500 fund. And so you have 40% VO, that's great. Here are the holdings of the S&P 500 fund. I don't know if you can see that, but Apple is number 1, Exxon is number 2, Microsoft, Google, Johnson & Johnson. You've heard of all these companies. That's great. Okay, so what the growth fund has is basically S&P 500 companies that really don't pay a dividend. And then you've got the dividend companies that are S&P 500 companies that basically don't really necessarily have a lot of growth. Together, you basically have another S&P 500 fund. So that's the growth fund. It's basically all S&P 500 companies. And then let's look at the total stock market. Apple, Exxon, Google, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Wells Fargo, Berkshire. These are the largest companies in America. Again, this is the S&P 500 fund. Now, there's more than 3,000 companies in this fund, but it doesn't matter because it's dominated. It's still almost entirely S&P 500. Basically, with the growth fund, you basically have an S&P 500. With the total stock market, you still have an S&P 500. What about with the dividends, the income, the high dividend yield? Apple, Exxon, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Wells Fargo, General Electric, S&P 5. This is 391 companies. But again, it's basically all the S&P 500 constituents that actually pay a dividend. So with the growth, you're generally going to get the ones that don't pay a dividend. With a dividend, you get the ones that maybe don't have growth. But together, again, you have the S&P 500 fund. And then even if you try to diversify across the whole stock market in the country anyway, and even if you go around the world, it's still dominated by the S&P 500. So just about every large cap fund you're going to find is going to be dominated by the companies of the S&P 500, and that's fine. But what you did was you said, I got 40% Vanguard mid-cap, 20% S&P. You might have been trying to go 2/3 mid-cap, so that might be my suggestion to you is go 2/3 VO, 1/3 SPY. SPY doesn't bother me at all. I think there is advantage in VO, as we said. So that's what I wanted Alan to know, and that's what I wanted you to know. My name is Joe Springer. I'm helping you make informed decisions so you can succeed in the market.